we kind of touched on it a couple of times here, is this idea of like, say, fit for purpose, this idea of, okay, no, don't rock the boat. That's very, very Canadian of us, right? We're by and large very, very kind and nice to each other from as compared to maybe some other countries. So we have this maybe unfair stereotype that, or perhaps fair stereotype, that we don't like to rock the boat. And I would say that in this case, especially in healthcare, especially given the current times, I think it's something that we need to rock, primarily because, of course, healthcare spend is incredibly high. It's fair enough, right? And that's largely because the population is getting older as well, right? There's more people living longer, more and more diseases. And in order to hopefully come up with a new solution, we kind of can't just go with the status quo, and we need to rock the boat a little bit. And I think cap, this is one area where I can understand why they didn't go down this path, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more diversity of views on the stage, to have this push and pull type of dynamic. Because largely speaking, everyone on the stage, it, generally, especially on each individual panel topic, would generally agree with each other, which I guess makes sense actually, because they're part of the same panel. So they're like, it's a little bit kumbaya, right? Which is fair enough, right? I can understand that overall approach. It would have been nice to hear from, let's say, a topic. Let's say one of the topics was outcome-based agreement that was on the stage, and I think both myself, and yourself are fans of that type of arrangement. Moving, at least, as something that should be experimented with, or at least should be looked at in the Canadian context. But it would have been nice to get someone maybe that would have been on the opposite side, right? Like, hey, I think this is I think this is crazy. It doesn't make any sense, because then we understand, okay, these is where the concerns are from, like someone who's pushing back, right? Now we have to, as a group, if we do want to move this forward, we need to be able to alleviate those concerns. And that would have been something that would have been a learning experience for me to understand, because largely it seemed like everyone agreed on by and large, everything. Yet we very seldomly make any progress. And clearly, because if we don't make progress, then that means there's something that's in the way. And not talking about what's in the way, I think, also does us a little bit of a disservice as well. So that's something I think we also shared with the capped organizers as well, from a topics perspective. But I understand why they didn't go down it, like specifically want to drive sort of these contentious type of conversations or dynamics. I can see the fear in that. I understand why we wouldn't want to go down that route. But that's why I would like to be maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I think being Canadian, it actually puts us in a good place, because disagreement does not mean that we need to be disagreeable, right? I think not wanting to sort of upset people is fine, as long as you're still able to convey your perspective. And I think that's really what we're looking here for here, because I think without that sort of those different voices at the table, it's like bringing in the patient voice, right, around a reimbursement table. Without those different voices, you don't get to the best solution. I think that's for me one of the reasons to have those disparate perspectives on that same on the same panel, for sure.
Yeah, maybe next year they should. Our suggestions for one of the topics or one of the panel discussions be a combination of both of what you had said about national pharmacare and what I said about maybe a little bit of a contentious dynamic, or a little like a little bit debate, like it's essentially a debate. It'd be interesting if it was a national pharmacare debate on the next cap. That just joins exactly what we actually talked about, which kind of be interesting to see.
I think there's a lot of things that are on the table that are open, especially when we're talking national
Yes.
pharmacare, especially with CDA really taking much, a bigger role. Let's say having let's say a renewed mandate to really look for value. You do have to start talking about those divisions of power. That's one of those questions. Maybe nothing is going to come out of it, but you have to start thinking about it. You have to just start looking at the way that we do value assessments in Canada. Full stop. Are we looking at it from the right perspective, or do we need to bring that value based care concept a little bit more forward to the table? PMPRB, they're I think they're about to release their final revised guidelines, and they're very, very different than where they started off pre-pandemic, probably for a good reason. But you can even put the question on the table: do we even need PMPRB anymore with a strong CDA process in place and a PCPA, pricing negotiator on the back end of that HTA review? You know, I don't know, but I think these are the kinds of questions we need to start. We need to also start asking when we're talking about policy, policy as one of the reasons for having this conference, and policy as one of the main focuses of the panels and the discussions that we have there. Let's tackle the big stuff. Let's put it all on the table, and let's get some different opinions to see what makes sense going forward. These are, I mean, those, especially some of those young students who were in the room and who had posters up. I know you managed to go see those posters during the reception. I mean, they're the future leaders. They're the future, decision makers, and I think they are sort of the young minds we need to start tapping into and start having these discussions and talking about what does the future look like, not just what it looks like today.
Yeah, we gotta be a little careful. Maybe if we shake the tree too much here, we may actually rock the boat too much here. We may actually not get invited back to next year's CAF.